You are a factory worker. You go into the factory every single day and you do one thing. You work, well, it's a toothpaste factory, and your job, you're at the end of the conveyor belt, and your job is just to put the cap on the toothpaste. So you go in every single day, 8 hours a day, and that's all you do every single day for 20 years. Sounds exciting, right? Well, I will tell you, if you had a job like that, it would not take a lot of effort after a while to put the cap on the toothpaste, right? It would become second nature because it's just this thing that you do, and you do it again and again and again and again every single day for 20 years. No days off, obviously. So that's what we're now going to do for reading and writing problems on the SAT. And that's the benefit of the four-step process. So what the four-step process is, four steps that I teach all my students of how to approach every single reading and writing problem on the SAT. You approach every single problem the same exact way, and there are a number of benefits from doing it like that. The most obvious of which is you get so used to approaching again and again and again the same way, same four steps. You practice, you practice, you practice, you get used to it, you get better and better and better at it, and then you go through the reading and writing section on the test twice as fast as every other student because it's just effortless for you. Hi, my name is Jeremy. This is Actually Understand, where you watch the video and then you actually understand whatever we're talking about. Today's video, as you could hear me talk about, is the four-step process. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to explain what the four-step process is to you, what the four steps are that you take for every single reading and writing problem on the SAT. And then we're going to go through an example problem to show you really what I mean by certain things when I explain the four steps. I would say please stick around to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all of the YouTube things that one does if you enjoyed the video. And if you have any questions or comments, comment them down below. So, the four steps are, number one, read the question. Not a complicated step. We always want to do this first because what we really want to be thinking about when we read the question is what type of problem is this? If you're new to this series, this is the SAT Toolbox series where we basically go through every single tool you should have in your toolbox for the entire SAT, for both reading and writing and math. And so something we talk about a lot is what tool do we pull out? And that's, for reading and writing, going to be based off of step one. What type of question is it? So let's say we read the question. The question says, which piece of evidence best supports the author's claim? Well, I don't know what's going on, but I know, hey, this is a reading comprehension problem, and it's going to be one of these specific types of problems where there's a text, there's going to be probably some data, some research, some analysis, some conclusion, something like that, and there's going to be a claim, a hypothesis, something like that, and I'm going to need to know, I'm going to need to understand the text well enough, and I'm specifically the hypothesis or claim well enough in order to understand what might support it, right? So that's like a brief thought that goes through our head when we read the question, if it says something like, which piece of evidence best supports the author's claim? All right, now we get into step two. I will say pay attention if you weren't already, because step 2 and 3, I would say, are the top two out of these four steps. The top two most important ones are step 2 and step 3. So step 2, read the text, but I don't really just mean read the text. I also don't like this font. Let's change the font to something, sure. Read the text, but I don't really mean read the text. I mean break down as needed. And I mean something very specific when I say that. Basically, have you ever sat and read a text on the SAT, sitting reading the newspaper at the dining room table, and it's a really boring thing that you're reading? Or maybe it's just really dense. It's really dense in information. And you read it, and literally you have to just go back to the beginning and read it again because it's as if you didn't read it, like you just didn't get anything out of it. So that will never happen on the SAT because as you go through the text, as I start to read, for whatever reason, because it's just a runoff sentence that's going on forever, or it's just such a dense amount of information in such a short amount of thing filled with sciencey words that the College Board just puts there just to throw us off, whatever the reason, as soon as we realize I'm not 100% following what's going on anymore in this sentence, in this last 3 words, in this paragraph, in these last 2 paragraphs, wherever you find yourself, you want to stop and you want to break it down. And I don't mean dancing. I mean, when I say break it down, I don't mean just reread. Because when we reread something that we just read to better understand it, maybe that's helpful. Maybe we get it then. And maybe probably we don't. What actually will help us understand what we're talking about or what we're reading is you have to ask yourself a very specific question or to do a very specific thing, which is, in my own words, what information is this last sentence, paragraph, 3 words, whatever it is we're breaking down? What is this trying to tell me? What information is this trying to convey? What am I getting out of this sentence? In my own words, what's the point of this sentence? What did I get out of it? That is breaking down the text. And that will leave you with an amazing understanding of whatever you're reading. Because by the time you spend, only a few moments, especially once you do this 100 million times and you do 100 million practice problems, it becomes very effortless and you do it very quickly. When you need to break something down, it becomes second nature. But when you do this, you really, it's almost like studying for a test. But the test you're studying for is answering a question about this text, right? And then by the time you get to the end of the text, you will not have to read it again. You very likely won't even have to look at it again because you will know every single thing that you need to know about this text to answer the question. And at that point, you are in an amazing position to do step 3. Are we ready to hear what step 3 is? Step 3 is answer the question in your own words. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Jeremy, the guy who runs Actually Understand, the YouTube channel, where you watch the videos and then you actually understand, I commented, I liked, I subscribed, but I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand what you mean by that. Why would you have me do that? Because if the question for the problem is which piece of evidence best supports the author's claim, I didn't read the answer choices. How am I supposed to... which of the pieces of evidence that I didn't even read yet, how am I supposed to know what the right answer is? And how am I supposed to come up with my own answer if I didn't read the answer choices? And how is that a good use of my time if it's a time test and I'm sitting here trying to predict what the College Board wrote on the answer sheet? Well, very good question. And also, thank you for liking and subscribing and commenting. The answer to your question is, when you sit there and you take a moment to say, if there were no answer choices, if my imagination was the only thing holding me back, I could say literally anything to answer this question. I could come up with any piece of evidence that I can think of. It could be the simplest answer. It could be whatever you first think of, whatever your first thought is, whatever you find intuitive. Oh, yeah, it could just be this. This would prove the text. This would prove the point, etc. By doing that, it may seem like you're spending time trying to predict what the right answer is going to be, which would be a waste of time. But that's not actually the point of what you're doing. The point of what you're doing is that by taking a moment to kind of critically think about what you would answer what piece of evidence you would say, what you would come up with if you could say anything. By doing that, consciously or subconsciously, you're thinking about, well, what makes up a good answer here? What am I looking for in a piece of evidence? And by doing that, maybe you'll come up with literally the exact same thing that the text or that the College Board came up with. Maybe your answer choice will be one of the answer choices. But pretty often it won't be. And that's perfectly fine. Because your goal is not to come up with whatever the College Board said. Your goal is to just go through the process of thinking about it, which is where you get the benefit. That's the point of step 3. Which is why either you come up with the same answer that they have, which does happen. You would think it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen sometimes. You come up with your own good answer, and it's just not identical to the correct answer choice, but it's still a good answer. Or, third option, what if I don't even come up with an answer choice at all? Or my own answer, right? What if I can't articulate in my own words what I would say, what piece of evidence I would say? Well, that's okay too. Because again, back to what the point of step 3 is. The point of step 3 is just to make the effort, to try to come up with something. Because the effort in your brain, as those neurons are firing, that effort to come up with what the right answer in your own words might be, is where you're getting the benefit. And so even if you don't come up with an answer, by trying to think about it, hey, the hypothesis or the claim in the text was that it's going to rain hot dogs out of the sky tomorrow. What would I, in my own words, what would the answer to that, what piece of evidence would best support that? I don't know. It's not even difficult to come up with a piece of evidence for the claim that hot dogs are going to fall out of the sky. It's not necessarily difficult to come up with evidence like that, but it's just such an open-ended, weird claim that I might struggle to come up with a specific piece of evidence. But by trying to think about it, as long as we get to the point where we can say, I'm not sure, but, and this is key here, but I'm thinking that I don't really know what piece of evidence I would say here, but I know I'm looking for something that shows X, Y, Z, that shows ba, ba, ba. And that is really what you want to get out of step 3, is enough thinking about it that you get to a point where you can say, I kind of know what I'm looking for, what I want in an answer choice. If you can come up with your own answer choice, that is definitely the best thing to do. But if it's too open-ended and you can't, as long as you come up with, I kind of have a sense of what I'm looking for. I know I want something that shows, for example, for the hot dogs falling out of the sky claim, I don't know what would prove that or what would support that, but I know if I'm about to look at the answer choices and I've made an effort to think about what my own answer would be, as long as I can say, I know I'm looking for something that shows hot dogs are going to fall out of the sky tomorrow specifically, then I'm ready to move on to step 4. Okay, step 4. We have made it so far. In fact, if you have made it this far in the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. But that's not what I was initially going to say. What I was initially going to say was, if you have made it through a reading and writing problem, and you've done step 1, step 2, and step 3, you have already put in 90% of the effort you need to for this problem. Because you understand it, you have an idea of what you're looking for, or you have your own answer, or your own idea of what the right answer should be. And now all you have to do is pick the right answer choice. Because you will, with all of the knowledge you have gained from breaking down the text this way and coming up with your own answer, you will look at the answer choices and you will see, I have 3 answer choices here that are trying to gaslight me or lying to me, are crazy and make no sense. And I have 1 answer choice that sounds just like my own answer, or doesn't sound just like my own answer, but I know that's the exact type of thing I was trying to come up with. And if you do step 1, 2, and 3 thoroughly, and you practice, and you get good at doing step 1, 2, and 3, you will always be able to find the right answer choice. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to do an example to show you really what I mean when I talk about these different steps. And also, definitely, if you've made it this far in the video, you're awesome. Definitely check out some of my later videos on certain reading and writing questions because there are definitely certain nuances that exist between different types of questions. There's like a certain type of question where all of the answer choices are bad and you kind of have to find the least bad one. There are certain types of reading comprehension questions where all of the answer choices are seem really good, or multiple seem really good, and you have to pick between really good ones. And there's different strategies we have for if I'm between two answer choices, but the reason I'm between two of them is because the other two, right, four answer choices for a certain problem, I've crossed out two of them for sure. I know those are wrong, and I'm between two answer choices, and I don't really like both of them, or I don't really like either of them. I just have to figure out which one is least bad. They're both kind of mid. Then we pull out certain tools that are different than if I'm between two answer choices, and the reason I can't pick between them is because I really like both of them. So there are a lot of different small tools that I want you guys to know. So definitely stick around and keep watching. And yeah, so let's do an example problem with the 4 steps. Okay, guys, we are back. I did a little cut, but now we are going over this question. I have it here not zoomed in so we can look at it, and then more zoomed in so we can actually read it. Skip ahead a few seconds for the actual breakdown of this question, but before we do that, what I'm going to talk about now is just some extra tools that I want us to have. I would say don't skip ahead, watch this part, but if you just want to see the breakdown with the 4 steps, then just skip ahead a little bit. The extra tools I want us to have is just to know that when we're looking at specifically, it's a reading and writing question, and it has a table or graph. Table or graph. And the question is, which completion of the text is best supported by data in the graph? Or it might say something like, in some way, maybe even if you're not completing the text, in some way you have a table or a graph and you need to use it to support some claim or hypothesis. You want to always think these 2 things when you're doing any question like this, which is, number 1, my answer choice has to be true. So this is something we're focused on during step 4, right? Step 4 is of the 4-step process. Is to pick the right answer choice. So when we're doing step 4, we have to think about, number 1, is it true? Because whenever we're doing table or graph questions, the answer choice could say the sky is blue. And I would assume for the majority of my viewers, for the majority of you watching this, we can agree that the sky is definitely blue. At least during the day. On a sunny day, the sky is blue. But if the graph or the table, not the text, if the graph or the table does not explicitly show that the sky is blue, or something some data or some fact that is so closely supportive of the fact that the sky is blue, then the answer choice that says the sky is blue is wrong. Even if it's the most logical statement, or a fact that is so obviously true. The question is not asking for any piece of evidence that is true. It's asking for a piece of evidence or something that you have to answer that is supported by the graph. Not supported by the text, not supported by anything else, but supported by the graph or table. And so, first off, we have to think, is it true? And that's how we analyze whether or not it's true. Is it strictly true according to the graph or table? If it's not, do we have to spend any time thinking about that answer choice anymore? No. Only once we're looking at only true answers, factually supported by the graph answers, then we can think about, is this supporting my conclusion? Is this supporting my claim? Is this supporting my hypothesis, right? Is this a good answer choice, basically? But we don't want to waste time thinking about, is this a good answer choice or not, if the answer choice is not strictly supported by the graph or the table, right? So That's an extra tool there where that applies for all of the reading and writing problems where you have a table or graph. And now let's get into going through the four-step process with this problem. So, step 1, read the question. Which completion of the text is best supported by data in the graph? I don't know anything about the text or what's going on other than there's a text and there's graph and there's data, and I have to have something that supports the completion of the text. Step 2, read the text, break down as needed. I would always say read the text before looking at any table or graph because it will explain what that table or graph, the context of that. But that's neither here nor there. You guys do whatever you want. If you guys want to look at the graph first, you can. In a study of the evolution of DPTA and DPTB, dipictoricin genes encoding antimicrobial peptides that combat pathogens, pause. Already, we're going to pull out step 2. We're going to break down the text, right? Because already, I'm not fully following. What are we talking about? Okay. In a study of the evolution of DPTA, DPTB, what are they? They're genes, okay, encoding antimicrobial peptides that combat pathogens. Okay, I would say the College Board loves to, in a question like this or a text like this, throw in lots and lots of sciencey words. You're not expected to know all of them, or even if you are, you can get away without knowing all of them. So the only words I would want us to understand here is that they're genes and that they combat pathogens. Pathogens, that's bad guys, right? Bugs, viruses, diseases, whatever, right? So these are 2 genes. I'm going to call them gene A and gene B, and they fight bad guys and foster beneficial microbes in fruit flies, Drosophila. I will also say, whenever I do an example problem with a student and I read the text out loud, I often skip the Latin names because we don't need to waste time having me try to pronounce names, Latin names, researchers' names, if it's not super relevant for the text, right? Just FYI. So, fruit flies, Drosophila. Researchers assessed the fruit flies' resistance to pathogenic infections by, we could say PR, some Latin name, and AS, bacteria common in the fly's environments. So, continuing to break down the text, what is the point of what this just said? What information did I just get in my own words? I'm looking at gene A and gene B, 2 genes that fight bad guys and foster beneficial microbes in fruit flies. Specifically, researchers looked at these fruit flies' resistance to infections by PR and AS, bacteria common in the fly's environments. Got it. Subjects included flies identified by mutations, silencing gene A, right? DPTA, that's the gene. So gene A, gene B, or both gene A and gene B, term types A, B, and AB, respectively. So whenever I do this problem with students, sometimes the respectively throws them off. I would say that's a word we are going to just have to know how to use in this context. For any of you that don't know, if I use the word respectively at the end of a sentence, basically, I could say John, Jack, and Jill likes chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream, respectively. What that means is the first person I listed likes the first type of ice cream I listed, the second person likes the second type, and the third person likes the third type. We're basically associating, there's going to be like 2 lists, and we're associating the first thing in the first list with the first thing in the second list, second thing, etc., etc. So, with that knowledge, we know subjects included flies identified by mutation silencing. Okay, it's a gene, and we're silencing it. We don't have to be geneticists to know, okay, is the gene going to be on or off in a certain subject? Well, silencing, it's going to be off, right? So silencing gene A, gene B, or both of them. That's 3 categories. Either we have gene A silenced, gene B silenced, or both of them silenced. And that's type A, B, and AB respectively. So type A, What is type A? What is unique about type A? Well, it has gene A off, right? Because that is the type that has DPTA, gene A, silenced. So type A has gene A off, type B has gene B off, and type AB has both of them off. That's how we use respectively in the sentence. So first category, gene A, B, or both of them silenced, and that is type A, B, and AB. For those of you who understood that super well, that's awesome. For those of you who needed a little bit review with that, that's also perfectly fine. I would say at this point we really should be aware of, conceptually, what do they have? What does type A have? Does it have gene A? No. It has gene A off, so it has gene B on, right? Jeremy, how do you know it has gene B on? What if it has both off? Well, which type has both off? Well, that's type AB. So type A is not the same as type AB. Type AB has both of them off. Type A has gene B only, and type B has gene A only, right? This is the point of breaking down the text. This is the point of asking ourselves to, in my own words, what is this saying to me? And breaking that down. Because now, a very hard problem has become a lot easier because we know what to associate with what. In conjunction with the observation that resistance to PR correlates with gene A activity. Okay, so fighting PR is something gene A does, but is not significantly affected by gene B activity. Okay, gene B has nothing to do with fighting PR. Data in the graph of survival rates post AS infection suggests that blank. Well, now we know what we're looking at in the graph, because what we're looking at in the graph is data of survival rates post AS infection. So not all a multi-bacteria infection, not PR, just AS, right? When we say in conjunction, this basically they put the first half of the sentence here just to make our lives harder. Because when we say in conjunction with the observation that this other thing also happens, we don't have to prove the first part of the sentence. The PR stuff we don't have to prove. We only have data about AS infection in the graph because that's what the graph is showing, and so that's all we care about. Okay. Now looking at the graph, average survival of fruit flies following infection. Survival rate, percent of live versus days after infection. Okay, so the percent of them that are alive, and then this is days after infection. We have 3 types. Can we go over what they have or don't have? We can. Type A, what gene do they have on fighting bacteria for them? Well, type A has gene B. Type AB has nothing. And type B has gene A, right? Go back a few minutes in the video if that is still something that's confusing, and rewatch how I broke down what goes with what. So, type A has gene B. If we have gene B, what happens? After 2 weeks, 90% of us, most of us, are fine. We're fine. We're good. We're happy. We're happy over here. What happens if we are type AB? Oh, well, we're all dead after 2 weeks. And what if we're type B? Oh, we're also all dead after 2 weeks. If we are in this category, we are dead. If we are in this category, we are fine. And now we've done the entire problem, basically, because now we have the answer to the question. Now we know exactly what we're about to say, which is, what does this graph suggest? This graph suggests that for an AS infection, right, that's what this graph is showing, we need gene B. And if we have gene B, we're fine. We're good. If we don't have gene B, doesn't matter if we have gene A, we still end up dying. So we need gene B to fight this infection. This is a study of the evolution of these genes. So maybe the correct answer choice might say something like, we evolved, gene B to fight AS, right? that was basically all of step 3 as well, right? 4-step process. Step 3, come up with your own, in your own words, come up with an answer, right? And we now have that already, which is we're looking for something that says, basically, if I have gene B, I'm good. And if I don't have gene B, I die, right? We don't want anything that says I need both of them or anything different than that. So we've done all the work for the problem. Now we just have to look at the answer choices. Which completion of the text is best supported by data in the graph? All right. A, DPTA confers defense against A Secret, AS, regardless of the presence of DPTB. So gene A confers, that might not be a word that we are super familiar with, but basically supports defense against AS regardless of gene B. Is that correct? No, not at all. Gene A, it's the opposite. Gene B defends against AS regardless of gene A, right? So it's not that, because we literally want to say the opposite. Gene B protects against only one bacteria species, whereas gene A protects against multiple species. Think about why answer choice B is wrong. There are 2 reasons it's wrong. First off, one of the points of the 4-step process, one of the benefits is that we can count on our own answer and our own breakdown of the text, so we don't have to do a lot of high-level thinking to know if an answer is right or wrong. We can do it based off of, do I feel like, was this something we were thinking about when we came up with our own answer? Rely on your own short-term memory from breaking down the text. You spent time breaking down the text so you could do that. Now I can just rely on my memory, rely on my breakdown to say, was I thinking about, when reading the text or answering the question or looking at the graph, this being the case? No. Well, that indicates it's the wrong answer. But also, what did we say during our extra tools? We were talking about extra tools specifically for this type of question. Number 1, we have to make sure it is strictly true according to the graph. Does the graph tell us anything about any other infections? No. It is a graph of AS infection, not anything else. So this could be true and we wouldn't know if it, according to the graph. We don't know according to the graph. The graph doesn't show it. So that's why B is wrong. C, DPTB may have developed as a specific defense against A Secret. Oh, gene B developed specifically for AS. That's exactly what we were talking about, right? Gene B is the thing that fights AS. So already we know this is our correct answer. Just to go over the concept, let's look at D. Defense against AS is strongest when both gene A and gene B are present. Think about why that's wrong. It's wrong because we only have to go back to our point of it has to be strictly shown by the graph. If the answer choice is the sky is blue, but the graph doesn't show that the sky is blue, it doesn't matter if it's a logical statement if the graph doesn't show that it's true. So could that be a true statement? Maybe, because we don't know how well they do when they have both genes. But that's the key. We don't know how well they do when they have both genes because this graph doesn't show that. And so that's not something we're even going to think about. And so the correct answer here is C. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. In conclusion for this problem, what we want to be thinking about is when I break down the text, when I read the question, break down the text, use the tools that we are talking about, come up with my own answer, and then go through the answer choices, we will have such a good understanding of even the hard, science-y reading comprehension problems. We will have such a good understanding that we will just immediately know the right answer when we see it. The time it took to do this problem will be shortened as you do problems like these and you get better at going through this process. It will take significantly less mental effort and time to do this type of breaking down. And also, obviously, when I'm doing the problem out loud, I'm going slowly, trying to say everything that so everyone could understand, right? That also makes it take a little longer. But ideally, this is a problem that after you get really good at the four-step process, in maybe 2 minutes, you could get this problem done and get it right, depending on the type of student you are. Thank you very much for getting to the end of this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please, if you are watching this video, comment whatever you want in the comment section. Comment, I watched this video. You don't even have to say I liked the video. Just say I watched the video. Say I watched the video and didn't like it. Give me some feedback. This is my second YouTube video ever. So definitely give me some feedback. And probably most common feedback is going to be a little more succinct. That's a good SAT word. You guys should look that up. Succinct, S-U-C-C-I-N, succinct, S-U-C-C-I-N-C-T. That's a good SAT word. Look that up. And otherwise, I will catch you in the next video. Peace.